Good morning, and welcome back to Jack's Coffee Break. My name is Jackal, and we are continuing our build series today. However, we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of building actual buildings, we're going to talk about building habitats. So one of the issues I often see talked about is frustrations with building outside the box, literal as well as figurative. And so I want to talk about some different habitat designs you might consider using in your next zoo. So for example, we currently have our jaguar escaping. Sorry, Amur leopard. This is not a jaguar, this is an Amur leopard. But thankfully he's returned to his habitat because I currently have the creative presets on. So even though I have animals in these habitats, they're going to stay where they're supposed to be because it's obeying the null barriers as if they were actually real barriers. So basically don't worry about any of our animals escaping. As we go through, I will show you the different strengths and weaknesses of the habitats as well as show you animals that I find work really well in these specific archetypes. So let's go ahead and leave our leopard alone and zoom out. We have quite a few to get through, as you can see through here. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just what I'm using to show off some basic shapes. So we're going to go ahead and pause. Real quick, for the sake of having something to show off, I built this little build kit out of the Twilight parts. This was very simple and easy to build. If you would like to have a tutorial about building habitats and barriers and different objects that you can use to decorate the edges of your habitat, that will be its own separate tutorial. Hopefully once it's out, I'll be linking it here in the iCard. So the first and most basic one that we can possibly do is this one, which is a flat piece of ground surrounded by some kind of fence. I have here a 1 meter tall fence, or like maybe just a little bit over 1 meter. This is really the shortest fence that you can have in the game. There are some animals who will actually accept shorter. For example, some of the Nile monitors and the tortoises will accept, like, you can use like pebbles and rocks to contain them. They really do not traverse over objects very well. But for most short animals, this is the shortest barrier you can use. This is a 2 meter tall barrier. This is the average. And to that end, we also have examples of some with viewing ports in them. And here's another style of viewing port. So for this one, I've used the Arctic fox as an example. This is a very small habitat, but it completely contains him and he can't escape. The benefits of using this one is that if you have a small animal in a small habitat, it's really not difficult to catch sight of him in this. Like, no matter where you are, so long as you're within this viewing angle for the path, you're going to be able to see him. However, it's not terribly interesting, and it's very basic. This can be a little bit frustrating to decorate for, but I think it is probably what most people start off building. So I wanted to highlight it, because this is something that is useful even as you progress your skills in the game. The next one is the moat. So I have two examples here. This is a wet moat. This is just where we filled the moat with water, whereas this one is a dry moat. So moats are not useful for most animals in the game. On top of that, they don't necessarily look great, but you can make them work, and you can make them work very well. So for this one, I have the tortoise. Again, any steep change in elevation will cause them to not be able to traverse that area. So this simple dry moat is more than enough to contain him. In fact, I probably could have made this even thinner. On the other hand, we have this wet moat, and this is very good for your primates and your lemurs. So lemurs and primates can't swim, and so if you have any amount of water here, so long as it's sufficient enough that they can't jump across, then this will be more than enough to contain them. Similar to the moats, we have the pit. This is basically just, you know, it's a steep cliff that surrounds the entire habitat, except that rather than having a flat space on the edge, you just sink the entire thing into the ground. So this is very good for animals who are going to be doing a lot of up and down, sort of like our alpine ibex, but who we want to contain. And it's also very good for tall animals like giraffes. This helps to keep the animal on, especially for giraffes, this is great because it helps to keep the animal's head at just about eye height, so the guests feel like they're having more contact and interacting with the animal, and they're able to see it a little bit better. They're not just staring at legs. This one is very easy to do. You're basically just taking your terrain tool, you're putting in a push, and then you're going to your flatten terrain, making it wide. And the nice thing about doing this is that because the terrain tools require you to operate in circles, you are guaranteed to not get a box. Like, you have to really work to get a box with these terrain tools. So just by adding any variation in your terrain, you're gonna get away from this boxy shape. You have to. So, very similar to the pit, we have the domed pit. So this one, you have a similar pit, but you have a mound in the center that brings the animal closer up to eye height. So for an example, I have the penguin in here. This is great because it gives them a lot of space to swim, but it also gives them an island where you can actually see them. This is not great for shy animals though, because it gives you the maximum viewing area that you could ask for. Similar to the pit, but where this can be easily walled off, this you're going to have a little bit more difficulty in walling off simply because you're dealing with all these curves. Adjacent to the pit, we have what I'm calling the partial amphitheater. It might have a more technical term, but that's what I call it. So this is where you have flat ground on one end, and then you slope it down into this pit through here. And you create this kind of ditch or a moat. So the animals are freely able to come up to this area, but they're not going to be able to jump over at any point. So this is a great way to add a space where the guests can get very close up, but they're not at risk of, getting into the enclosure, and the animals are not at risk of getting out. Sort of building on this amphitheater style, we have what I'm calling the full amphitheater. This is where, as you stand on the ground, the front part of the amphitheater is below your character's standing line, and the top of the amphitheater is above your character's standing line. So I find that this style is really good for wolves and other canids. They have a lot of movement, and so watching them run up and down the hill can be very enjoyable. So I have the Arctic wolf in here, but really this could work for dingoes, could work for dholes, really any of those animals, and there's probably several others that this would work well for. It would not work well for elephants. It would not work well for hippos. They're going to have a very difficult time navigating this simply because it is so steep through here. And then I believe this is our last one for now. Yes, it is. So the next one is this staircase style. So this is building on the full amphitheater style, but rather than having a full slope, a full hill, where there's not really a lot of places where the animal can just sit on a flat piece of terrain, this one offers you lots of flat areas where the animal can just sit and bask, where you can put enrichment items. And for this one, I have the Amur leopard in. This is where we started. I find that this is really good for animals who have a lot of up and down, a lot of kinetic energy, where the terrain variation really works as part of their enrichment. So most of the cats I love to do this style for. Although anything that can sufficiently navigate hillsides, you're going to have a good time with this. So like I said, this is not extensive. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of some potential habitat shapes and styles that you might consider. I'm not going to do a full tutorial on how to build these. I recommend playing around with your terrain. The main thing is, build your terrain, make sure you use your smooth tool, and consider where your animal is going to be able to escape and reinforce those areas, where they're going to have difficulty navigating, and create flat plains through that area. So, on top of that, I do suggest framing all of your edges. So for example, these look a whole lot better than these, and that's because I've just used rock work, and I've used this rather simple shape. It's just this little L piece right here. And I'm not sure exactly what you would call this, maybe like a retaining wall. But I find that using retaining walls throughout your zoo gives it a very clean, finished feeling, and it feels a little bit more secure. The animals usually cannot jump straight up a sheer cliff. So, on top of that, I think it looks good. Is it a little bit frustrating to use? Yeah, but if you're okay being just a little bit off in your angles or having a little bit of clipping, I think that it can add a lot of quality and aesthetic and a lot of good things to your zoo. Anyway, Hope this was useful, and I will see you again soon. Good luck building!